you very much, Karen. Thank you, Rod, for inviting me. I think I'm the only person from Southern California speaking, so I have to convince you that not everyone in Southern California is against high-speed rail. Actually, there are a number of municipalities that are very much in favor. I want to say that high-speed rail, as people here in the room know, has often transformative effects on cities and regions, increasing mobility and accessibility, but also changes the built environment around cities. High-speed rail is a mega project, has generated a lot of debate, mostly around politics and economics, and there has been much less discussion about the effects on the built environment and actually how cities can take advantage of high-speed rail to promote their image and even municipal economies. And I want to say that my premises for this discussion are as follows: that good urban design is essential for the effects of transit on development patterns to be positive, that certain physical preconditions should be in place for a station to have a positive effect on local economies, and urban design should seek to address them, that urban design guidance should respond to the specificities of the local context, and such guidance would need to consider the high-speed rail station both as a route and as a place, or what I call, we should be designing for both high-speed and low-speed mobility, and I think at the end of my presentation you will understand what I mean by that. We know that high-speed rail stations have acted as catalysts for urban development in a number of first-tier cities, but not only. And actually this is from Rotterdam Central, that the whole area saw quite a lot of development around the station and around the neighborhood. But not all cities have witnessed positive effects from high-speed rail. This is an example from the Ebbsfleet International high-speed rail station, 10 miles outside London, that so far has only witnessed this park and ride facility. So scholars have started wondering why we see this differentiation. What are some factors that play a role? And initially, a number of scholars have mentioned about city status, noting that it is usually first-tier cities that are gaining most from high-speed rail development. This is, however, not absolutely true. We have examples like Lyon. For example, we have example of second-tier cities along the called Frankfurt corridor in Germany. We have Spanish cities, second-tier cities like Ciudad Real and Cordoba and Zaragoza that really saw quite a lot of positive development around their stations. So what is it? What are some other factors? Distance from the metropolis. It seems that in a number of contexts has played a role, especially for cities that are about 100 kilometers, that's about 65, 70 miles from a major metropolitan center. These become better integrated to the metropolitan area. They get better visibility. The condition of the local economy, cities with pre-existing strong economies, with cultural assets, with tourism, have oftentimes been in a better position to use high-speed rail to strengthen these economies. I cannot say enough about the importance of connectivity, accessibility, and intermodality. The report that Karen mentioned is really looking into Germany and Spain and how they managed for a number of areas to increase these intermodality, where you have the high-speed rail and you have this almost seamless integration between this mode of transportation and many other different modes. The station location has played a role. Is the station location at the center part of the city or at the peripheral location? The examples that we have from overseas shows that central locations, as you can imagine, have a much better advantage than peripheral locations. And also the importance of plans. And actually I was very happy to see what San Francisco is doing. But planning for the high-speed rail, I cannot say enough how important it is to create these plans, because just by thinking, city planners thinking that the high-speed rail is going to come and catalyze the economies without pre-planning is not going to happen. So what about the built environment of the station and its surroundings? The smooth integration of transportation and urban development, we know, is not a simple undertaking, and actually in an earlier article, two European researchers, Bertolini and Speed, talk about how stations should combine these characteristics of being both nodes but also places. And quite often, and especially in the US, we don't get that very well. We really design the station as a transportation hub, as a node. Look, some good examples of stations as places from Germany here. Hanover Station, Leipzig Main Station, where you really integrate the transportation aspects, the hub aspects of the station, with retail, where people, not only who are traveling, but from other parts of the city would want to come and spend some time. I actually published an op-ed in the LA Times, kind of saying a little bit, making a strong statement, design landmarks, not simply stations. And here is the station in Madrid that incorporates some tropical gardens along with eateries and a number of facilities that make the station a place. However, in many cases, it is only the nodal characteristics of stations that are privileged over the place characteristics. So here are some common mistakes that I have seen. The relationship between the station and its neighborhood is often not well studied. How the station should relate to its immediate surroundings, how it is best accessible from the adjacent streets, how its scale and form relate to the neighborhood. Often we don't have particular plans created for the station neighborhood, or we have some very generic boilerplate plans that ignore the specificities of the local context. And no mitigation of the barrier effect created by the massive railway infrastructure, the huge parking lots and station buildings, and thus the station becomes a divider. And this is something that it is in the mind of a number of local planners. This is a quote from a Burbank planner that kind of says how the station is going to be a huge area, and it should definitely change the face of Burbank. Some other mistakes. The station quite often is internally oriented. It's built like an airport. High-speed rail stations are not airports, should not be. The station often is designed as automobile-oriented, well planned to be accessed by automobiles, but not well planned to be accessed by pedestrians or cyclists. And often we have too much parking for cars and little emphasis to alternative transportation modes. This is not the case in Europe. And I'm not so romantic to think we have very different urban form context here. I understand that. But sometimes we really need to think about this low-speed mobility and the other modes that would access the station. Often there are few spaces for people in the station facilities are only devoted to efficient travel. And station architecture is often utilitarian and non-discrete, as you can see here in the Spanish station. So what are the physical preconditions? What should we be doing as urban designers, as physical planners, to change this? I think you heard a little bit about coordination of land uses around station areas, densification of uses, location of major traffic attractors such as important public buildings near stations, distinctive station architecture. All this is called quality of place. And this is definitely what happened in Rotterdam Central, where Klosterman and Tripp that studied the place talked about how now we have a functional diversity of surrounding land uses, an improved pedestrian environment, reduced urban fragmentation by dealing with infrastructural barriers, and overall a good public space quality. And you see, this plaza in front of the station that becomes a place where people want to be. I posed this question about what are the physical environmental preconditions for successful development around high-speed rail to 27 high-speed rail experts from 9 different countries, and this is a list of things that they gave. But this is, I think, a useful list, but we also have to think that each station is quite different. And so there are different urban design variables that we have to look at. So the geographic location, there are different typologies of stations. The station location. Actually, this is a kind of a typology that my research group has created about stations in California, that you see they belong to 7 different types. So the urban design strategy should be quite different. we have Union Station in Southern California. It is at the edge of a very vibrant CBD. And here you can think that, a high density, mixed use office commercial retail makes good sense, right? Anaheim Station, on the other hand, is a suburban business center. It's the home of Disneyland, the Honda Center, athletic facilities. These are not adjacent to Arctic. They are a few miles away. So we cannot really look into the 1/4 mile radius, which is a traditional TOD. You have to look into the 2 to 5 mile radius and find ways to connect high-speed rail station to these facilities. And Palmdale is an ex-urban station, a very low-density station surrounded by agricultural land. Well, here probably what is important is to combine your planning with the station down the line. And this is actually the basis of a report, again funded by the Mineta Institute, that we talked about complementarity. Now, Palmdale becomes 20 to 25 minutes away from downtown Los Angeles. I will tell you what this means in a while in terms of an urban design strategy. Some other factors that should affect the urban design strategy has to do with the network. Is it shared or dedicated track? The dedicated tracks take more space. The guideway, elevated, surface, tunnel, all these would play a role in the type of urban design that you create. The parking types, structure, surface, concentrated, distributed, these are again parts of the built environment that need to be considered. So this just summarizes some of what I see are the urban design variables that should affect the strategy per station. And to demonstrate this, I want to show you some scenario planning we did in my research group, where we prepared some ideas for 3 Southern California stations that belong to very different typologies. And this is Anaheim, again, the home of Disneyland. We prepared 3 scenarios of development. The first one we called Distributed Disneyland, and it is based on the fact that Disneyland wants to expand. And we envision possibly the scenario, a public-private partnership between the city of Anaheim and Disneyland paying a connection, a metro rail connection. Actually, the original Disneyland metro rail was built in 1959, and futurist Ray Bradbury had said at that time that Walt Disney is the only man in the city who can get a working rapid transit system built and turn it into a real attraction so that people will want to ride it. So how about connecting Disneyland to Arctic through a metro rail and creating at the stops opportunities for hotels, entertainment facilities. The city can create parks or squares. Developers may want to build around there, and this is a conceptual plan that shows how this could happen. A different idea, again looking into the particularities of the economy of Anaheim, we call train to training. And this is based on the observation that California has the most Olympic train facilities in the US, all along the California high-speed rail route. And actually Anaheim has quite few of those facilities. So taking this into consideration, you can think of, with shuttles, connecting Arctic, which is the black building, with the Honda Center and the Anaheim Stadium. You can think about possibly some retail, medium-rise housing for athletes, commercial facilities. This all drawn from this observation. And the third scenario we call park, shop, and ride, a different scenario that comes from the observation that the California High-Speed Rail Authority had requested 6,000 parking spaces from Anaheim. The city has only 1,000, but looking around, you can find 5,000 other spaces in scattered lots and vacant lots in the neighboring city of Orange. So how about connecting these spaces with a linear retail facility and kind of prompting developers if there is a kind of a pattern here in what I'm saying, it is the fact that you really need to try to bring private development in, right? And so connecting these, eventually consolidating this into a linear retail center with a lot of parking and even possibly moving sidewalks. A very different city is Burbank, and the particularity of this city is that it is going to have the high-speed rail station near the airport. And so a scenario of an aerotropolis seems to be more significant here, but also Burbank has a lot of film studios that are about 2 or 3 miles away that need a lot of post-production facilities that now do not have. So a scenario that really, first of all, relates the airport, the high-speed rail, the metro link that passes, that's the blue line, through some linear commercial facilities, but also uses some of the underutilized properties of the airport for post-production facilities for rent, can bring some revenue for the city of Anaheim. And lastly, we have Palmdale. And again, remember, Palmdale is now going to be 20 to 25 minutes away from downtown Los Angeles. And according to a Palmdale planner, having the high-speed rail station and having more people consider Palmdale as an option to live in order to work elsewhere is going to be very beneficial for the city. They would like to create 9,000 units of housing. Los Angeles, like San Francisco, has a problem with housing affordability. You can take advantage of that. You can create more low to mid density housing combined with parkland, urban agriculture, and very limited retail along the station. So to summarize, I'm going to reflect on a number of things that I said to put together a few urban design recommendations that we really need to consider both the local and the regional context and assets for high-speed rail. It is not only the quarter mile anymore. That we need to address 4 spatial zones: the immediate station area, the station district, the municipality, and the region at large. That we need to give emphasis to the quality of station space and architecture. We should try to mitigate the barrier effect. We should consider stations as externally oriented hubs rather than internally focused buildings. Identify and populate station and station surroundings with uses that serve as attractors. Treat parking structures, if possible, more as scattered and hidden instead of the huge surface parking lots. Take into account the nearby destinations and link the station with different transportation modes. Consider complementary planning with neighboring cities. And consider planning as a set of phased goals related to the stages of the system development. And thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
I have one. California, or at least Northern California, is really ambivalent about growth and new people, and a lot of the reason we don't have enough housing is that we don't want more housing. So how does one, all of these ideas kind of depend on development, and how does one bridge that?
Yes. I try to show 3 very different contexts, and some cities are against growth in Southern California, and some cities would like to see more growth, like Palmdale. I think all cities would like to have more economic development and better economic development. And so what I showed was not all housing. Some of that was not at all housing, and it was coming from discussion with planners from the different cities. But the idea behind it is, how do you use your local assets and use the high-speed rail as a catalyst to boost these local assets? So a city like Palmdale that finds that they really want to build more housing, they can provide more affordable housing, this is doable. But a city like Anaheim, the housing might be more limited, but have more of some mixed-use retail, etc. So you have to really take into account the context, as you know.
Great presentation. Thank you.